Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear friends. As an architect, you design and for the present with an awareness of the past for a future which is essentially unknown. A wonderful quote by Norman Foster. I couldn't find better words to start this wonderful day where today's and tomorrow's architects are gathered. Hello, everyone. This is Dhanushya, an architecture student of 5th semester from Vaishnavi School of Architecture and Planning. I welcome you all to ASketch EduCon 2020, a national level youth conference organized by architecture students of India under the guidance of Ibrahim Siggatullah and ASketch EdTech Foundation. I thank each and everyone for taking time from your weekend morning and gathering here for a tremendous event. Where sharing knowledge and passing down the wisdom from seniors in this architecture profession to the budding architects remains the main motto. Before we begin the day, let us watch a video of ASketch EdTech Foundation that explains about its beautiful journey and inspiring journey so far.
Let's start. Okay.
Yeah, you are on.
I put it.
That is our ASketch, and I'm proud to be a part of its further journey. ASketch Educational Foundation is an organization run by and for architecture students. It is known for its vision to bring out hidden talents and improve skills and foster young talent by providing them with an abundance of opportunities and work mainly in architecture community. The foundation also empowers the educational progress and professional growth in the students. The main aspect that moves ASketch forward and motivates in reaching every architecture college is to make education stress-free. Now, I would like to take a moment and take names of my core team members without whom this event wouldn't be possible. Abrar from Deccan School of Planning and Architecture, Hyderabad. Adrigna from Vaishnavi School of Architecture and Planning. Aziza from Deccan School of Architecture and Planning. Aravind Parthasarathy from JNIAS. And I'm from Vaishnavi School of Architecture and Planning, Ailesh from RVS Padmavati School of Architecture, Chennai, Harshita from JNFAU, Hyderabad, Hetvi from Mawadi University, Gujarat, Himaja from CSIIT, Hyderabad, Jahnavi Patel from CSIIT, Hyderabad, Ismail from Nyasi College, Chennai, Madhura Vishwaja from CSIIT, Meghana from Vaishnavi School of Architecture and Planning, Vijayawada, Neha from Mastro School of Planning and Architecture, Hyderabad, Prerna from Aurora Design Institute, Shanmuki from Aurora Design Institute, Shahrukh from Aurora Design Institute, Hyderabad, Shravani from Sri Venkateshwara College of Architecture, Hyderabad, Taha from JNFAU. Though the team works with all that determination, there is a captain behind us who ties the entire team together, acting as a binding agent, if I may say, and making a team what it is. He's a mentor and the founder of A Sketch EdTech Foundation, Ibrahim Sibgatullah, who himself is an architectural student, currently in his fourth year. As an architecture student, he started his entrepreneurial journey by making study notes and sharing it among his friends from other colleges. His notes started spreading across Telangana in no time because of the content quality and standards. That's when he realized the need to connect students with each other and formed a knowledge sharing platform on WhatsApp and Telegram. He also launched an Instagram page named A Sketch India to help young artists and students promote their artistic and creative skills by featuring their works and also by promoting their social media pages. So that's how A Sketch started, and that was in the year of 2017. And today, in just a short span of 3 years, his dedication and his skills pushed this platform to a whole new level. What started as a community for architecture students in Telangana now has its branches spread into 20 states across India, connecting students with each other, thus creating India's first digital youth community that connects students from all over India and promotes knowledge sharing and unity. Now, moving on with today's keynote session. There is a disclaimer before we start. So, this event is proprietary to A Sketch EdTech Foundation. Everything shared here is confidential and proprietary. Sharing through any form or media, copying, reproduction, distribution, or recording, as well as captures, screen captures, part of the entire presentation without written consent is prohibited. Contents and discussions are also considered confidential. Please ask questions in the form given, and we will try to answer all of your questions in the end of the session. We have on our platform a person who is not just a practicing architect, but also an academician and a brilliant orator who has conducted numerous workshops and seminars on architecture, planning, and the environment, not just in India, but also in several countries abroad. So we welcome architect Dean De Cruz, the principal architect and co-founder of Mosaic Design Combine, a leading design firm based in Goa, involved in urban intervention, architecture, conservation, product and graphic design, to speak about changing demand on education in the 21st century.
Start?
Yes, sir, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone, and a very good morning to all of you all. I must say this pandemic has brought about some really innovative ways in trying to reach out and compliment a sketch on its initiative. Especially, it's lovely to see so many young faces trying to push this whole agenda of addressing the problem that we're all going through. And congratulations to you all, and wish you all the best. I think with the situation we have in India, with about close to 500, colleges of architecture, uh, all actually struggling to manage in these pandemic times, it's an opportunity to actually even rethink, where we're going as an architectural profession. we can see that it's in a crisis. You know, architectural education is in a crisis, the profession is in a crisis, but this provides us an opportunity to actually relook at how we can reshape the world. And the best way to do it is actually to change young minds. I mean, architects who are senior, like myself, tend to get very fixed in the way we do things. We look at architectural profession as a very standard approach where a client comes to you and you design. But there are a lot of other architects now who are actually innovating in a way. So we see architects who are gone into construction. We see so they design and build. We see architects who build on their own and then they sell what they build. We see architects who have gone into other parallel creative scheme careers that we can see all over, and all of them are extremely valid. Yeah. So I think it's an opportune time to actually redefine where the architectural profession is going. And I think the topics that you're even discussing through the panel discussion and presentations, I think are interesting, that will spark off. Now, there are many more topics that one can actually look at to delve into and allow people to think. So, I mean, things like the biomimicry and sustainability. And we need to redefine these topics as well. If we look at the issues of sustainability, the typical definition of sustainable is changing now. Now people are talking about, we just can't be net zero. We have to be positive. So the new term is really called regenerative architecture. So we're actually, we're contributing to nature, not just mitigating the problems that we have as designers and architects creating for nature. So it has to be a far more proactive approach to architecture in the way we design, in the way we execute buildings, and the message that we send outside. Our own office, for example, is attempting a net zero thing. We're not even regenerative at the moment, but we've gone off the grid. So both our buildings are off the grid. We produce our own food on the land of the side. Of course, recycle our water, waste, whatever we can do, and also created a community at the side of it. So we need to look at innovative ways in which we, as architects, actually are not just designers, but influencers in this world around us. So when looking at the issues of that we're facing today as a world, I mean, if you look at the environmental issues, look at climate change. Some people say that the civilization as we know it will end in 2050. So where do young students of architecture have an opportunity to collaborate? I mean, we're looking at, a doomsday scenario in 30 years, and some people say it's quite possible the way things are happening. So it's not just this architecture which we have to create this very iconic buildings or beautiful things or just sustainable. We're looking at an extreme situation of survival. So where do we as architects contribute to that? Where do we change the lives of people, protect the lives of people, of nature, the environment, and social systems? Yeah. So we're looking at an architecture that's integrated with all other creative fields of, so we're not just people who design buildings, we're going well beyond that. We are part of a team of greater collaborators that are actually bringing people together. And we need to redefine and reassess that word architecture. I mean, architecture, chief builder. We need to get that. Right now, we're a cog in the wheel. We're all the way, we look at the way we design, and everything is designed by specialists. The specialists who give us the engineering, who give us the materials that we use in the facades, and all we are just aggregators, actually, at the end of the day. We're just, picking ready-made things and piecing them together. The design process is being lost in this way. So we need to look at how do we actually regain our title as architects and make a world a better place by using the skills, the creative skills, the engineering skills, the aesthetic skills that we have to bring it together. I've been design chair for a few institutes. I've been on the board of studies. I am on the board of studies of a number of institutes across India. And I can see the standard of architecture is slowly going. One is, of course, there's a great dilution in educational standards because there are not enough good people to teach. I mean, at the time that I graduated architecture, there were just 30 colleges of architecture, all India. And now there's almost 15 times that. So we're not producing teachers as we used to in the old days. So we need to look at how do we actually reach out to these things. And a sketch is one great way of doing it, where you're actually creating a platform where institutes can actually tap into this thing and also supplement in education. Of course, there's no greater way than to have a physical contact in the architectural education. But for the time being, we need to do with what we have. And we can see there are tools available. I mean, a lot of the online stuff that's available, we can see 3D walkthroughs of buildings that we can't visit now. So these are possibilities that we can actually tap into using this new digital world. So so we need to really redefine our role as architects, as I mentioned. And I'm really glad to see that A Sketch is actually on that way. And I wish you all the best, and look forward to listening to all the other speakers and the students on their views of how we take this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that different insight and perspective you gave to all of us. I really agree with you that the definition of sustainability changes according to the current situation in outside market of architecture. And redefining architecture is something students should really realize it, and not actually implementing just till so far for college. And I really thank you for your wonderful words.
Thank you.
So everyone, we have our next panel discussion starting at 11:20. So we will be back at 11:20.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Mute. Hi there, Mahesh.
Hi. Hi.
Virtual meeting.
Yes.
Ibrahim, you're also there.
Yes.
Priya is also there.
Hi.
Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Hello, Haripriya.
Hi, Mahesh.
Yeah. I
Ibrahim,
think,
is Ibrahim there?
yes.
I just want him to let me share screen so that I just want to do one dry run.
Hi, sir. Good
Ah.
morning. Sir, you can actually share the screen by yourself, like it is on.
It's already on.
Yes, sir. So you just have to press the screen sharing option.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
see my
And
screen?
yes, sir, I can see it now.
Okay, let me just enlarge it. That's it. Yeah, you can see it.
Yes.
All right. Okay, what I'm doing, Mahesh, so minor change from what one did in the other college. Anyway, I'll be confessing in the beginning, saying some of these slides have been shown. So by chance, if anybody has again logged in, they might have seen. So just a few things in the beginning, and of course, finally, it just comes down to a few sketches, which are, I mean, not really of any high quality or standard, unlike what senior architects can do. But and actually, I'm not good in sketching. I'm terrible. So I just wanted to anyway share the second year level, third year level sketching with the second year level students. So that goes on. And yeah, and then there are some simple statements there. That's it, something like that. That's where it ends. Yeah. So hopefully it should be done in 8 minutes.
No problem.
Okay, let me stop sharing so that, all right, done. Give me a minute to set my chair
Okay.
and all that.
Yeah. We are all live already. This is streaming live. We will anyway start at sharp 11:20. So I hope all of you are ready with your set of ideas.
Yes.
We will have the team A Sketch members welcome all the viewers soon, and then we will have our introduction, and then we will go question by question.
There's a 20 seconds lag. अभी यहाँ पे जो बताता ना कि 20 seconds के बाद it will come over.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we start, we have a short disclaimer. This event is proprietary to A-Sketch EdTech Foundation. Everything shared here is confidential and proprietary. Sharing through any form or media, copying, reproduction, distribution, and or recording, as well as screen captures, part of or entire presentation without written consent is prohibited. Contents and discussions are also considered confidential. Please ask questions using the link shared. We will answer all the questions at the end of the session. In this panel discussion about importance of design concept in architecture against current practice, we have architect Yeshwant Ramamurthy, a graduate of Sir J.J. College of Architecture. Architect Yeshwant Ramamurthy began his career at C&T Architects, followed by an assignment at a town planner as a town planner in Iran. Returning to his hometown in Hyderabad, he established Studio One Architects 40 years ago. Over the years, he has engaged with educational pursuits as a teacher, juror, editor, and academic advisor to institutions across India. He is widely regarded in India's professional academic world of design as one of its most influential practitioners. Architect Yeshwant is currently leading a team of architect researchers in writing a seminal book on hitherto undocumented stepwells of Telangana. And we have Professor Prakash Varanashi. Professor Prakash Varanashi studied architecture in Bangalore, urban design at SPA Delhi, and heritage conservation at UK. His 26-year-old firm, Sathya Consultants, designs conscious, culturally appropriate, and eco-friendly architecture, exploring varied design alternatives. Sathya sir has been in academics teaching architecture, urban design, conservation, and sustainability for over 35 years. He is presently a professor at KS School of Architecture, Bangalore. Besides, Sathya sir is involved with freelance writing, events, public talks, YouTube videos like TEDx and Desha Forum, and NGO activities. We have architect Priya. Priya ma'am is a graduate in architecture from JNFAU. She was the former director and chief architect at Curve and Bilwa. She has worked on several projects that include both commercial and residential spaces. Her current area of research is evolving technologies and their influence on urban lifestyle. Now, before I take leave, I would like to introduce the moderator, architect Mahesh Bangad. Mahesh sir is an architect professor at Dr. Bhanuben Nanavati College of Architecture, Pune. He has qualified as a project manager from United Kingdom and holds a master's in environmental architecture and planning from SSPU Pune. Apart from the professional practice, he is also a motivational speaker and also has conducted various workshops and talks on different subjects like vernacular design, risk management, project management, design thinking, to name a few. He was awarded the A3F Young Achiever Award for the architecture in November 2016 and has also won the A3F Best Teacher Award in 2017 at the national level. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I kindly invite architect Mahesh sir to take over this panel discussion from here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Team A-Sketch. It's so wonderful to be here today. And most importantly, the whole idea of envisaging something like this for the students, by the students, and something that is going to make a lot of difference for times to come. I think I must give credits to A-Sketch for this kind of an initiative. Just before I start asking my questions to these stalwarts here, I'm a little nervous myself, but yes. Before that, I'm just going to put a disclaimer to all of you who are watching this live. There are links in the chat box where you could put up your questions to us. We would be more than happy to take questions for our panelists from the audience. I have my set ready, but I don't want to be the lone warrior here. I want you to participate. You can ask your questions and we can take them up with the panelists so that we get good insights from them. There is also a feedback form if you see the description of this video, and you will get to know more details sooner or later. So here it is, the first day of the A-Sketch EduCon, and I want to start with a subject, and it's a very interesting subject about design concepts. And I'm sure the students watching this are really keen to know what exactly the presenters, the panelists are going to talk about. To tweak it a little, what we have done in this panel discussion is we have requested our panelists to make slide presentations as well, rather than this being a Aaj Tak live panel discussion where we are just shooting questions and trying to get answers. We will also have them, some of them show their slides as well to aid this whole discussion. But before I go to our first panelist to have his say on design concepts, I'm going to open up a question to all three of you. Sathya sir, Yeshwant sir, and Haripriya ma'am. The question is, before I go to the word concept, I want to go to the word design. Tell me, what is design? According to you, is it a process leading to a product? Or do you think it's a product that decides the process? We will go with Yeshwant sir's input first.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. And at the outset, I would like to thank Ibrahim and Team A Sketch, and also Mahesh. Thank you so much for moderating this panel discussion. So your question is, does process lead to the product, or does product lead to the process? This is like the old conundrum of which comes first, does the chicken or the egg? It's also in some ways goes back to this entire discussion that all of us have through our educational process and through our careers about whether form should follow function. So at some level, we're going to be addressing all of these. To my mind, you can't distinguish one from the other and call them black and white. There are always shades of gray. And very often process leads to the product, which is as it should be. But also very often in my experience, it depends on the kind of typology of design that we are doing, that the product decides the process. And I'll give you an example of this. We actually do a lot of work in the hospitality industry. And if someone comes in to me and says, I'm going to be serving exclusively Kerala cuisine, then obviously that sets my concept for the restaurant, because I have to be a catalyst towards the authenticity that he is trying to create, the regional authenticity, which I interpret through my use of architectural forms, of art motifs, and so on, from that part of the country. So to answer your question again, both of them take place in some degree or the other, sometimes more, sometimes less, but one can't really remove one from the other and look at them separately.
Wonderful, thank you. I think I was looking for that chicken and egg analogy. So thank you for putting it forward. So I'm going to move to Sathya sir to get his insight on what do you think? Design is process based or product based?
If we are walking somewhere, what decides the walk? Does the origin decide the walk, or the destination decide the walk? Maybe the best thing is not to think either of the origin or the destination. Just walk the path. That's it.
Amazing. That's Gandhian to me. Just walk the path. Very interesting. So we're going to go to Haripriya to get her insight on this. She's been researching a lot, so I'm sure she will tell us about what comes first, or does it both go hand in hand? Haripriya, please.
Thank you, Mahesh. I was actually giggling in the background, listening to both Sathya sir and Yeshwant sir, because those were the first points that came into mind, that chicken or egg. That's where we start off. So to start with the first part of your point, what is design? As an individual, I would say to create is to design. What we create as architects are spaces, but what I understand in the process of learning, teaching, building is that we create more the person's, an individual's mind. We create spaces for minds rather than products or buildings. So if I come from there, yes, we do not know whether the chicken comes first or the egg. or we do not know the journey without following the path. We might read somewhere else, attributing to both the seniors here. So I would say starting somewhere on the other is important. And in the given context, at a times we already know what we are wanting or what problem we are trying to solve, where a solution might be the approach to a design process and the vice versa. At times we do not know what we are going to create, yet we have a strong feeling or an intuition of the people who are the users, their brain and the physiology, that we might arrive and create something. So just fixing up to the word, I would say creating, irrespective of whatever context it is what design is all about for me.
Excellent. Creating is very important. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because as designers, we have the power to create, and not just create products, but values. And we have that as architects, I think it is our superpower, and we should all use it effectively. All right. So moving on, I'm going to request Sathya sir to start with his slide presentation, throwing light upon what is his insight about the topic of design concepts and its relevance with our commercial architecture that is happening currently in the 21st century. So I'm going to request Sathya sir to take over.
Thank you, Mahesh. Some of, if any student has logged in by chance, if you have heard some of these presentations, because I've done it for 2 different schools in the recent time. And when I was called upon by the sketch group and Ibrahim, I said, well, one has already been into it, and maybe one should step out and let somebody else do this than me, because I've just been doing it. Then they thought that is the reason why I should again step back in. I said, well, but anyway, here it goes. So along with a lot of most commonly used words, I really wish we could do this face-to-face across. Staring at the screen is not the best way to create a dialogue, but well, I'll do my level best. So along with the so-called redos and night outs, concept has been one of the most common words in the education curriculum today. And it is something which troubles, which is something which excites. It's something, it's like love in the typical love story films. So it has everything in it. It creates frustrations, it creates hopes, it does everything. So a lot of students, when one travels around, a lot of students do ask this question about, sir, what is concept? It's very difficult to answer. I anyway have a very philosophical answer, which will come at the end of these slides. But anyway, until then, in the practice, I don't know about others. Yeshwant sir is a very senior architect, but I can tell you this, at least in my practice, not many people ever ask me, Sathya, what is the concept behind your design? I may have, I may not have, but they don't openly ask. And many people who design, right from the masters to engineers to the household families themselves, when they design for themselves, I don't think many people consciously look at the word concept. People want a good design. That's it. It's like having good food. Go to a restaurant, and people would like to enjoy the food. Nobody will go to a restaurant asking, how do you cook? So maybe something like that. So concept is a word which is very dicey. We have to be very careful in using the word. And it has certain amount of abstraction about it. So it's not very easy to understand. That's why a while ago also, when Mahesh asked a question, my answer was just walk the path. Because sometimes when we think too much, this is what all philosophers say, whether it is Ramana Maharshi or J. Krishnamurti, too much of thinking can be a problem. So one should just be also in a sahaja sthiti, be in a natural state of mind. But anyway, so there can be a lot of apprehensions. It's not that concept have no role, they have a role to play, but I think we need to demystify, because in many schools, students really get frustrated. They go through tensions by saying, I don't have a good concept. So what are the idea of the concept then? Concept is very broad framework, guideline. For example, just now Yeshwant sir mentioned about how in the hospitality industry, if somebody is going to serve a certain kind of a cuisine, he says, I would like to know that, because that becomes a frame of reference for Ramamurthy sir in designing that restaurant. So it's a guideline, it's a process, it's all of them. But remember, it also can be very rigid sometimes. And if it's rigid, then we are stuck. And this is also what a lot of people do. Students mainly, they say, I'm stuck. I have a good call. Mainly in thesis, this happens. I know tomorrow there's a session on thesis. So people say, sir, I started with a fantastic concept. Everyone agreed, but now I think I'm stuck. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. We need to be careful about it. And if you can carry on with the initial concept till the end, fine, try. But if you can't, doesn't matter. So, what is important is at the end, the design should come out nice. That's more important. The initial concept may change after some time, or the same concept may continue till the end, or it may evolve and transform them into something else. As long as we are able to hold on to this thread in whatever way, that's fine. So it's like we should not get stuck with it either. So in summation for this first part of the slides, there are the whole PPT is in 3 parts. This is the first part. This will end shortly, the last but one. So concept is, well, go ahead, use your words. Idea, criteria, theme, thought, approach. Now there's a very deep word there. That's a very deep word. Concept is a phenomenon. I won't go too deep into it today, but phenomenologically speaking, concept is a very deep word, or concept is a very deep phenomenon. Either way we can say. We'll not go into that. Now, but then one spoke earlier about how in many places people simply design. So design can just happen. Now, the modern way today, we architects included, design can be defined, not defined. Don't forget the word, not definition. Design can be explained as a very conscious intervention in a context. That's how I've been explaining the word design to a lot of people when they ask. Design is a very conscious intervention in a context. But traditionally, design has not been a conscious intervention, or it may be subconscious. Without thinking, design happens. Design can just happen. How? Design can just happen if we maintain our basic human animalistic qualities. This is very important. As an academician for the last 33 years, let me confess with you all, my young students, we in the academics often affect, and we in the academics often negate what is on the left-hand side. It's an impulse, the instinct, the intuition, the intelligence, imagination. These are the sources of design. And in education curriculum, we take away the intuition, we bring in instructions, we make it all university bound, we may have textbooks, we have examinations, and we take away the impulse and instincts. I also do that. I know it, but I'm confessing. And those people who can maintain that impulse, instinct, intuition, intelligence, imagination, let me assure you, they don't need an architecture course. Of course, they need it to know some technicalities in making drawings and structures and few other things. But the design, no, not needed. This is a human. Any animal can design. What's on the right side? If one is confessing, saying we are taking away the fundamental, essential, basic way of designing, what can be done to that? Well, right side again does not need teachers. It does not need colleges. Just be in a position to analyze, doodle, observe, read, sketch, think, whatever you can. That is the real way of understanding architecture design. Rest is on instructed way of understanding. I'm part of instructing. I know my limitations. But inspiration cannot be instructed. Inspiration is what you people have. And it is there inside. Let it rise up again. Now, there are a few sketches here done recently while sitting. Most of them were done sitting with my thesis students. So these sketches have no purpose, no project, no site. It is just an idea. It's just a thought. It is just whatever you may call it as. It is just a phenomenon. And none of them are very great. I'm not very good in sketching. I've always said it in the past, but I continue to say. But sitting with thesis students, this was good enough. Just a composition. Now, is there a purpose behind it? No. But if somebody wants to make it into a primary school, maybe it can become a primary school. Maybe it can become an art center, maybe. But it is just, or it can be a restaurant. It can be something else. It can be a rural training center, but just a composition. Or this, one just kept on drawing the lines. And when I showed it to somebody, they said, sir, what is built in this and what is not built in it? I thought it's a very interesting one. reaction to what one did. So on the right side, you can see which is built. And I owe that line not to me, it's to some one of the architects in the office. So they asked, what is this? So I said, which is built. The idea was to just go on drawing lines and conceptualize. Now here again, this is plans for no people, it says. Recent one, 16th of September. So it all started with playing around with some L shapes, and one kept drawing them. Then one just tried to draw some diagonals. And again, maybe this can become a school. This can become, some kind of something else. But the sketch itself has no purpose. It is just drawn. That's all it is. And that's how the intuitions can be again recollected. Doodle, analyze. Don't go with prescriptions that we teachers give you. Go with what the mind thinks and suggests. There's another one. Here, of course, it started with a conscious thought of a circle. Then I thought, okay, let's this circle be a plaza. And then it became what it has become. Just some buildings around. One more like this, one more. This was actually explaining to somebody how a generic plan can lead to a concept. On the left side is a generic plan, courtyard, 4 wings. You split it, shift them, put them under an oval shape. So the right side one is a concept. The left side one is a generic form. I was just explaining to a student. There's another one, continuation of the same thing. On the right side, you can see those 4 L forms. And with the axonometric view, different shapes, curves, heights, it can become an amazing massing. And one can say this amazing massing has come from the simple square plan which you saw earlier. This is one more example where we started working again for a student. We started working with the square, and you can see the central form there with a tremendous amount of verticality and spaces in between. Just a simple sketch. This was again an explanation to talk about how to break the monotony of the corridors. Otherwise, we have a corridor, central corridor, rooms on both sides, subdivided like cakes. And it's okay, it works. It's been there for centuries, but how we can conceptualize something else. Then, of course, one was telling, this is again done for a student. Then I just view there, this can become a small classroom concept. Written workshop, staff room, lab, whatever. The corridors are not going boring way. There are turning points, the light everywhere. Rooms get minimum 2 or even 3 set external walls. So the same square foot area becomes a wonderful building. There's one more one where a student asked me, sir, I want to design a building with the external service core. So on the top sketch, what you see, all those vertical lines are for the toilets and lifts and communications and ducts and whatnot. And in the lower level, you can see those cross marks are the service ducts, or basically service core seen from outside, and rest of it was just done as a concept, again, idea. This was another example to talk of additive forms, which everyone does in their first semester, second semester. And here was one forming of design. You can see the word written there, FORM, forming the design, well, in a metaphorical way, form and forming the design. So the plan is on top and some 3-dimensional visualization is on the bottom. And this can again become a college building, or it can be a corporate office, or it can become a shopping complex, whatever one wants to develop it. The whole idea is, this I've titled as Gateway to Nowhere. It actually started with some other idea, and then kept drawing something, and this looked like this. I thought, look, it looks like a gateway now. There's one more like this, another form, one more form. Well, these are all rigid straight lines, voids and solids and massing, projected plane, recessed plane. This is with a lot of curves and arches and different kind of plastic kind of profiles. And this is something else altogether, a complete dabba box looking outside, which can have an amazing interior space. Now coming to the formal conceptualization. Some of these words, analogic, iconic, pragmatic, and all I have taken from Jeffrey Broadbent's book. And some of them are feasible, contextual, understandable. Very consciously, we can evolve a concept. This is a third part, last 2 slides. So a concept can lead to a design, which is on the left-hand side. Well, design also can lead to a concept, which is on the right-hand side. I've just written the sequences. And these are the determinants of a concept. On what basis we should arrive at a concept is a very good checklist. I hope this will be very useful to students. We can have ecology, economics, we can have innovation, maintenance, memories, or perception, or people. So there are a lot of reasons, a lot of basis on which we can evolve a concept. So my young students, I can assure you, there are enough ways to evolve a concept if one wants to. But then fundamentally, what is a concept? This is a rather philosophical, spiritual answer. Some of you might have heard of this Purnamada Purnamidam. So the concept of concept is concept itself. It is intangible phenomena that gives tangible expression to the architecture it creates and stays intangible. Thanks, Mahesh, for letting me show some slides very quickly. I hope, I think I've crossed the time.
No, that's fine. Crossing the time is allowed as long as the content is that interesting, and it sure was. And the place where you ended, I think, is the place where Yeshwant sir would like to begin, because coming from the field and designing for varied clients, he is going to actually tell you about the concept of a concept is a concept itself. And at times it gets so difficult to tell the client what, because his idea of a concept is far different than your idea of a concept. So before I put a question to Sathya sir, I'm going to ask Yeshwant sir to present his take on what design concepts are. And then I'm going to ask both of you one question each, on which I would love Haripriya's comments as well, because like I said, when somebody's researching over something, it gives a lot of insights on that matter or that topic, and it allows that person to comment better. So Yeshwant sir, over to you.
Thank you, Mahesh. Sathya, with your permission, I'm going to print out your text slides with the bullet points, and I'm going to stick them in my studio because we have a lot to learn from those. And thank you for disseminating the process so beautifully and for disseminating what concept should be. I'm sure we've all learned a lot from that. So I'm going to show you a small project, and just through illustrations and through the narrative, I hope to be able to convey to you how the concept of this project grew. Okay, so this is a country home we designed for a client of ours. Country home is really another way of saying it's a farmhouse. And when he first gave us the geographical coordinates of the project, we went on to Google Maps to see where it was. And what did we see? We see this fairly barren land with this strip of land going diagonally across the picture. What did this tell us? It told us that it's a small farm, that it's very elongated. It showed us the access. But the most important thing that we learned here is that it was very close to a lake. So automatically then what derives the concept, what helps us in making a decision about the concept is what are the bylaws that govern construction very close to a lake in the full tank level. The other thing that came out of this site plan was the north point. Stay there. Stay there. So the north point gave us indications about the client himself. You can see that as per the dictates of Vastu Shastra, which is what really clogs our concept in many ways, if you want to call it that, which challenges our creativity in other ways, if you want to look at it the other way around. Anyway, the north point gave us an indication that this person probably acquired this piece of land because it was so Vastu perfect. And then looking into his mind, one knows that when I'm formulating a concept, whatever he wants me to do here, I have to keep that in mind because it seems to be such a strong priority with him to make him invest in this property very recently. This is a new project. In fact, I'm sharing these images with you even before we showed them to the client. The last images we put together only at 7 o'clock last evening, and I don't yet have an appointment to share it with the client. So this is fresh off the design table, so to speak. So we'll go and look at what we saw when our client said, come across and have a cup of tea with me last week. So as we drove up, we found that there is a small house, and you can see that this house is an RCC structure, fairly decent, fairly well maintained, but it has no character at all. It's not a farmhouse, it's a farm on a house, and there's a farm it's a house on a farm. So that's the difference that we saw. And the client basically wanted us to come in and to use his wife's words to give this whole place a wow factor. So this is possibly the smallest project that we've ever dealt with. You can see that it's no more than about 500 or 600 square feet at best, and has no merit at all architecturally, which was the reason that we were commissioned to kind of help them out with a so-called wow factor. How can we turn this into the dream that my client has? To give you a little background about him, both he and his wife are professionals in the city of Hyderabad. But with COVID times, they've been increasingly finding the need to get away from their office, from their hospital. The lady is a doctor at the hospital, and their children are both studying at university. So they wanted a place to retreat, which is perhaps why they bought this property. And it was very evident to us that they gravitate towards this property over every weekend, and definitely maybe once during the week too. So it had to be redesigned to suit their requirements. So what we observed when we went onto the first floor slab, the roof of the ground floor, was that you can begin to see the lake. This is the picture on the right of the picture of the slide. And when we got to the terrace, you see more of the lake. And this house, as it was existing, that didn't seem to kind of, it didn't take cognizance of the view. It didn't kind of see the potential of the view in creating a much more restful kind of place where people could enjoy the farm. And we thought that we should really exploit this potential which was there and which the house hadn't yet exploited. So we look at the plans. The plan on the left is the existing plan, which we kind of scaled down and we redrew. And we decided what was going to be demolished and what had to be rebuilt. But as I said, this was within GO 111, which in Hyderabad is a government order that regulates the amount of built-up space that you can have when you're in that close proximity to the lake. It was also evident that these people go there to have a relaxed time. So it followed that we should have covered decks, covered verandas, which are transitory spaces between the outside and the inside, and where we imagined we could create more spaces for them and their families and their guests to come and hang out. They mentioned during the course of the discussion that they entertain a lot, and there are 3 generations of them who entertain. The young girls have very young friends who come there, so their requirements are different. And there are also the grandparents who come there. So it seemed a pity to kind of box them up into rooms that already existed. So what we did, you can see in the picture on the right, was to look at the existing structural system and see how we could make use of that, because it was in a fairly good condition, to expand the building. So that also dictated how the concept could develop. So we have a veranda which is in brown, which doesn't constitute a constructed space as per the government regulations, but gives also a protected space and continues to exploit the view, which is towards the north. This is the first floor. It has a balcony running right around it on the roof, which you would have noticed in the slides that I showed you. So we decided to cut the slab with minimal kind of changes, add another bedroom and a bathroom, and add a much more spacious deck, because this is from where we would begin to get a view of the water. We also added a new staircase and a lift, because as I said, there are the older generation who are now in their 80s, perhaps closing on 90. And we thought that a lift is no longer a luxury, but becomes a necessity for people like that to be able to enjoy a property like this. So we wrapped a big veranda around the north and the east of the house. And we got to the terrace. And on the terrace, we had already, by the time, exhausted the permissible built-up space that GO 111 was going to allow us. So we decided to leave it open, except for the lift shaft going up, and give them the kind of liberty to arrange for parties that the youngsters wanted. They just wanted to set up buffets and barbecues and so on. So this is a space which is unhindered by any structural elements or any built-up structures. So this is a home that we designed for this couple. You can see that it's an ultra-modern house in Jubilee Hills. And so one of the things they told me was, when you design our house, please don't give us these modern lines. We are living in that kind of modern architecture. We want something different. So quite often when a client doesn't have a concept of what he wants, it's useful to know what he doesn't want, because that at least rules out directions in which you can go as an architect to create his dream and his ideal home that he's looking for. So we began to make a few study sketches, and we rendered a few images. And what you see at the bottom right is the building as it exists, and what you see at the top left corner is what it could be turned into, where a gate has a sense of arrival by giving it a small structure like a canopy. And we puncture windows onto the roadside, and we treat them with a little decorative work. So this is the before and after pictures of the front elevation. Regarding style, we were not tied down to any style, but we just wanted to bring out the atmosphere of relaxation, of informality, of something that allowed people to step from the room onto the veranda and from the veranda onto the garden. So these are views again from a different corner. These are views of the deck on the first floor as it exists today, and keeping the slab in place, how we wanted to create by load-bearing walls a sloping roofed extension. This is on the first floor. There are 2 RCC columns already there, but rather than have them just as 9x9 columns or 9x14 columns, we thought we would clad them in brick and give it a kind of a sense of a Spanish country home, if you want to call it that. Next. So these are some close-ups of how the building could look. And as they say, God is in the details. So detailing is a very strong part of the concept, and it has to happen right from the beginning. For one thing, it convinces you that you're doing the best by the client. And the second thing, you're able to convey a lot more about the aesthetics that you have in mind by working on detailing, even at the initial stage of making a presentation of the drawing to them. So that, in short, is how we ideated and we created here. So I just thought I'll give you a more practical look at how we go about doing even the smallest of projects. And at this point, I'd like to say that despite the number of years I've been practicing, nothing is too small. And that's a message I would like to send out to all students, that you're not necessarily designing malls and so on. As long as it has a creative challenge, I think one should learn to take on the smaller assignments. Very often they turn out to be the most rewarding ones.
True that. Thank you so much. Actually, one of my questions that is going to come to you later actually is based on that part of knowledge. But before now we take Haripriya's individual take on the topic of today's panel discussion, I'm going to ask you all a common question. All 3 of you, I would appreciate if you all 3 could contribute. I'll start with Haripriya. The question is very simple. And may have a very small answer or elaborate answer also. But in the academic field, do you think design concepts are a discrete notion, or does every design that happens in the academics during the college days have to have a concept?
Mahesh, I would say this later part of your question is have to have is something that would be great, would be actually great if we can do that. But as Sathya sir was saying, that we should be aware as academicians, directly or indirectly, of our influences of our own choices as taste, styles, likes and dislikes dominating the students. And the responsibility of the student as an individual would be how great as a budding architect would they turn up when they have a stronger opinion. It might be totally irrelevant whether it is positive or negative, but the opinion is where the justification or the inference of understanding as a designer starts from. So I would say, yes, it will be amazing, beautiful, and awesome is a word I would love to use. If we have a concept, it again, as Yeshwant sir was saying, it doesn't have to be something very big. It can be something very minute where somebody might come up and say, I want to use brick for my construction. And that's the thought that could initiate the whole organic process of how something will look, feel, and how it will make the user feel inside it using also. So I think, yes, in a way, having a concept, big, small, good, bad, evil, will make a lot of sense to be having the conscious as a designer to interpret why, what, and how we did it. That would be something I would.
Perfect, perfect. That is what something I was looking for as an answer. Sathya sir, your words on this, please.
There was one slide which had a list of what could be called as a determinants of design. Now, if we look at what Yeshwant sir has shown, you would notice that climate, vastu, belief systems, site of course, the existing building, and many more. So many more have played a role in shaping what was into what will become one day. I know it's not yet become. But sir, I should tell you, a few of the images were so realistic. I thought the building's already built. Anyway, back to this. So what is important is, again, going back to what Haripriya said, in a way, we should have a starting point where the design is rooted. What are the sources of the thought? That is more important. And use them. We can call it as a concept, we can call it as anything else, but being rooted is important. And there are many ways of routing a design. That particular slide, one day I just sat and we kept on typing, whatever came to my mind. There can be double the number of keywords than what is
Yeah,
there.
we saw those words. Yes, true that.
There can be double of them.
Yeah, could be. Yes.
So, but one liner I would say that let's not get very conscious about the need to have a concept. It can be very troubling and students can get frustrated. Just let's not be conscious. Just carry on with whatever idea impulsively comes to the mind and then shape it.
True that, true that. I have faced the same while teaching at BNCA. My students come to me and saying, sir, I don't have a concept. How do I make a concept sheet now? The design is ready, but what do I do now with it? So, yeah. Yeshwant sir, your thoughts on that? And then I'll again go to Haripriya for her personal presentation on the topic today.
Right. So I think in my experience with students is as we get into the senior classes, one begins to ask them when they're talking about this word concept to even start thinking about materials, about structural possibilities, about the technologies of construction. It's not enough just to dream. That dream should be something doable. So very often people find this frustrating. Very often when they start to research, when they start to find out and collate information that they already have, this becomes very fascinating. So I think it's our responsibility as teachers to kind of show them the way of amalgamating practicality, technology with a strong sense of aesthetics.
Great, great. I think to sum it up for all three of you, I think what Sathya sir was trying to say, that don't push for having a concept, but what you said, Yeshwant sir, is right, that it should be an amalgamation of ideas, design decisions, if I had to put them into words, that the design decisions that we make consciously could act as concepts. And what Haripriya said, that at some point or the other, you will have to make these design decisions, and that is where they turn into concepts. So yeah, they are not a discrete notion. They surely are a very important aspect of the design process. So Haripriya, could you throw some light through your projects on the topic that we are dealing with today, so that the students get an idea about how the designs get approached?
Sure, Mahesh. Thank you very much. So I will start sharing my screen. So to start with, I would love to give a round of applause to A Sketch, as I feel jealous of them, to be very frank, that I'm not a student at this stage, but I'm sitting as a presenter where possibly I would have bugged everybody with a lot of more questions. Yet, this is a wonderful, wonderful initiation of students trying to educate and explore and grow together, and having it spread across on an online community like this is wonderful. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be part of this panel, especially being part with such senior, well-known architects. I've been personally spoken to Sathya sir or Mahesh, but Yeshwant sir, yes, we have met and kind of known, and it's been great to always meet sir and always learn from him. So coming to the points that we have to discuss today, I would probably be touching the points that Yeshwant sir just finished and was quoting in his understanding of design concepts about material and structure. This is one of the design philosophies that I wouldn't say this is my personal philosophy, but something as an individual, as an architect, I believe in. Recognizing the need is the primary condition for design, and Ames couldn't have put it better. And another aspect that, as architects, being that elite group of understanding design more in aesthetic sense, more in user sense, and having an education qualification to have our work being used by others. Another very small point that we all have to look at and understand is that as human beings, all of us are one way or the other hardwired to build and create. I would rather quote something which is in Hindi, said very well, that roti, kapda or makan. And other than roti, if you're looking at kapda, not our field, yet makan is something that all of us, every person, how to see, how to perceive. And with that notion, I think the need to understand the purpose of a design in terms of what it is serving, whom it is serving, and how is it going to serve is the most essential key factor that design has to evolve from. So not taking further any time, I would be presenting and sharing with all of you all two of my very basic projects. One being at the earliest phase of my career as an architect after graduation from college, and the second one, which is the most recent, which got completed in 2018, and also what these two projects have taught me, and that I would like to share with you. So, bricked elegance, as the word itself says, and before I move on to the next slides, it's the primary material that is used in the overall construction here is brick, exposed brickwork. So this client who came across to us was a client who has been a consistent older client. We had done for him work at Pune for his residence, and this is a farmhouse that he came up and asked us to design. And that is where the whole problem solving started. And where to begin is why this question is, when you have worked with the client already, they trust you, they know you, and they say, "Tu kar sakta hai." That's one scary part to start off with. Too much confidence is also too nervous, breaking. So we came with a discussion where the word or farmhouse and the word that the client was constantly using was that ghar ka feeling chahiye, or it should feel cozy, nice. Then the form that was going on in the mind, because the client was actually using this particular indication overall in the discussion, that this is what is forming. And somehow, somewhere, he had actually sketched, or during his conversation with us, I did that quick Google doodle of a primitive child sketch that is there. And yeah, it had to be functional. So what our intention came up to be is that we had dealt with the client already. We knew the taste of the client, but what we wanted to offer the client was something more, what makes the space more closer to nature and to the person itself. And the location played a very major important role in this, and also understanding the craftsmanship. And this is something that was completed in 2008. And this was my first initial project to be part of. By the time I started working here, it has already initiated, and my concentration was, I had never worked at any level, student or intern, with brick. Always wanted to work in scenarios of Arwell and places like that, but never got the opportunity. And this began, or was the first step for me to understand the first basic material all of us are familiar with as a construction material, modern day man-made construction material linked to organic material, is the brick. And this is where the whole concept evolution came. The previous slide, to just get back to, we literally wanted the shape of the typical house that we draw as a kid. All of us are familiar to that. And all the relation towards the beauty of brick, the texture, the way it withers and the way it changes, ages, is what the intention of creating this particular architecture was all about. And the moment we described this to the client, there was like, when can I see it happening? There was no question. There was no, I think, step back, because the way it was thought about to be more simplified, more standing as an icon or a monument in the location, made it to stand out yet blend into it. So the picture that you see on the left hand side is the entrance porch, and on the right hand side is the I can say the rear part of the residence, the farmhouse, which looks onto the lake. I think Mahesh would be familiar with the location that I'm showing here. So the context that further on is understood, and I'm quoting some parts of an article that I came across here, and which relates absolutely to the idea that we're sharing today, is that material is one way of starting a concept. Understanding why, or what is the purpose of a material, why would you want to use it, how would you want to use it, is it suiting the context of who the user is, where it is being located, could be a very constant and a standard thought process that will evolve to govern the overall appearance of how a building looks, feels, and make the users interact, adapt, and grow towards it. So I'm quoting some of the observations of one of the articles of Arch Daily, where it talks about how materials, we come in touch with material, and the materiality plays a most important role, which counts the idea of how it looks, both in terms of form, function, and the location. So moving on to the next part, this is a very contradicting part of the architecture that I had to deal with, which is very closer in terms of the duration, as the first one was roughly 2008, 2009. This is a decade later of duration of 2018 completion. And as the word itself says, I'm using the word container because that is what the architecture is governed at. Contained is, we'll come to the part where I explain about the project. Yeah. The only requirement the client had, the client was very curious to get into hospitality department. Don't ask the question why. The other wanted to have something different, had a very restricted and reframed budget, wanted it very fast. For the first phase of the execution, we were only given 30 to 45 days precisely, if I have to recall and tell you all that. And the points that we had to look at were, it had to be temporary because of the location of the site. So the site is located on the 100-feet road on Kaveri Hills of Hyderabad, where there's a conflict of the existing masjid and a builder association there. And most of the land spread across in that area do not have the possibility to have any permanent constructions till the post-legal case settles off. So the permission only given in profit or in understanding of everybody was that they could be renting out the land and have any kind of construction which is temporary based. So you pick and move it. So the idea was, okay, it has to be temporary. And if the client is investing a good amount of initial funding, where this is the first time they're getting into hospitality, we had to relocate, look at the relocation possibility of the structure overall. That was a call. And this cannot happen if we complicate the overall ideology of how it is done. So simplify, make it simple, make it more usable, make it like a Lego system where you can connect, reconnect, and reuse. That was the concept of simplifying the overall idea. So I'm not getting into the details of a lot of pictures here, but giving two glimpses of how the space is. We have used 60 feet length containers, two containers that are used. One was used for the kitchen and one was used for the office, staff areas and the storage, also including the toilets for the washroom areas for the customers. And this is spread out on a 900 square feet of two plots which were rented out. And the condition when we started this particular site was that it's kind of like a swamp land. So we had to fill up the land, flatten it out, get a strength for it. And the idea of using container, to be very frankly, started from the initial discussions that we had. We had pitched in a lot of temporary constructions, movable and things, but somewhere for me, the very strong thought that controlled the overall idea was, can we use a shell where we change some parts of the shell and fix everything up so that when you lift it and take it to another suitable location, just have to fix up, clean up, and you're set to go. Could we do that? And another thought was, why not mobile restaurant? That was not what the client's favorism was towards. So we had to just chuck off that. And we said, okay, let's look at this. And luckily, the client loved the idea of using container. It was also something that was being appreciated by everybody. And I got my dream to tie and put in my research about shipment or container architecture. Now, when we started this, as a conscious person, as a conscious architect, having a social responsibility is, if we have to question, why isn't container architecture at a boom if it is such an interesting context of use? Why do we have them cheaply available? Why isn't the government or anybody who is in the shipment industry discarding them? These were the questions that we have to understand when we talk about a very innovative material. Yes, it is considered to be one of the materials which is considered to be part of the global evolution and giving a green recognition for the usage. Yet, it has a lot of issues that we have to understand before even implementing it. That is, because of the way they are created, an empty containers transport back to the place of origin from where it is used to transport any material to another location is not feasible in terms of the cost, efficiency, and the duration of transport. So they are stacked in the shipment yard and rot like that. Now, another thing important is the amount of carbon emission that these containers give out when you have to fabricate them to make them into usable spaces. Now, if we have to look at into different kinds of fabrications that are possible, which are industrial, gas-based, or CNC cutting, these generate a lot of emission. Reason being, the kind of chemical layers that are on the surface underneath or all the six faces of the container. So when we had to start, one of the best part that happened, I would say now, very out loud, is having the restricted budget. We couldn't experiment with a lot of industrial fabrication of the containers that we took, but we had to look at understanding, one, that we to not want to have an increased carbon footprint from our projects as a responsibility, as a social responsibility. And another thing, we don't have the money even if we want to do it. Let's not use the money for something like that. Was a conscious decision that we made, where we actually created the prefabrication mold, that is creating doors, windows, and openings, any kind of an aperture that had to be made, collapsion, recession, addition, everything was done manually using hand grinding technique. So this was a tedious job comparatively, but initially when we had to do it, we had to recognize within the corrugated sheet of the shipment container where it could be cut easily, where it could be removed. And this added a value that everything that was cut and fabricated to create an opening or an aperture was later on used as an entity of a sunshade or a rain cover or a table, anything or the other that could be arrived because of that particular sheet of metal. So this is where one way or the other, the idea of being responsible for what we did, right? Yet again, if you say, ask me the question, would you repeat it? Then I would say yes, but with a lot more conscious understanding of what scale I would use it. 2 containers was good to use, yet it still has its own implications. But the beauty of it being that it can be reused. I can go to the client, say when he says, we are not gonna have the restaurant here, we just can lift it up and go to another place. Just to add to the point, here you see a camel because the overall restaurant rotates around the theme of having a desert layer. It's called date, as in the date dry fruit, and also the date.
I was just about to ask that question actually.
Yes,
Haripriya, sorry, we will be running out of time because we have some audience questions coming in, which the students want all 3 of you to answer.
Yeah.
So I'm really sorry to cut you short on this one. You could just quickly run through the remaining slides so that we move to the audience question. Thank you.
Thank you. So coming to another interesting part of design that I would want all of us to understand, especially the students, is the word that all of us are familiar with, which is jugaad. I think this particular project had a lot of it, wherein we used a pen stand to create a lamp shade. So that is the best part. That is, it might not be planned yet. If you actually are conscious and aware, there are very innovative ideas that you can come working with material, working in this space, and also working with people who understand better than us. I have a picture of one of our on-site workers here, whom you can see on both the pictures. This person pushed us off limits at times with his too much of a knowledge and too much of restriction, but we learned that there are things that are possible with the ideas of implementing our jugaad design approach. And yeah, as to close this session from my end, the inferences that I draw from the 2 projects that I could present to you all is that these are not something which are European or Western, or rather awesome. There's no wow factor the moment you see in terms of the form, shape, and structure. But what I would say is they're very functional. They stick to the context of the approach that we have, where it either is dominated by the surroundings, the site, the material, or the requirements given by the client, which at times dominate most of what we decide. Another factor is here is that the functionality also is governed by the materials that we have used very consciously. And this is one way of arriving at concepts, not being very utopian about the idea, but sticking to the basics where we are conscious as designers of the decisions that we make and the implications that it will have in the present and the future. I think that is where I would close the session and my part of the session, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Haripriya. It was so elaborate and so interesting. Actually, I almost lost a track that I had to look at the time also, because it's good to see projects, and when the designer himself explains it with that much passion. Yeshwant sir was explaining his projects. I was very keenly looking at them. And when I saw Sathya sir explaining the concepts presentation, I wrote to Ibrahim saying, maybe next time we should have had three presenters, have three presentations showing their work and their concepts presentation as well, because this could go day long. It's such a interesting topic. But due to time constraint, we only have 5 to 10 minutes left now. What I have been getting is I've received 25 questions already, and it is a difficult task for me to screen. But what I've done is I've tried to modulate the question in such a way that I think it will do justice to a lot of questions. So a couple of students have written that can all the panelists throw light upon this following problem that they feel is that at the learning level in college days during their 5 years of architectural education, during various design problems, they have fantastic ideas. They have concepts which are a little unrealistic at times, a little over the board at times. And at this learning level, when the student is trying to make his or her own design decisions and evolve some interesting concepts, do you think that the mentor's role, the teacher or the architectural design teacher's role in the process of allowing the student to evolve his or her concepts is equally important? What do you think this role of mentor should be like, or how important it is? We will start with Yeshwant sir, and then Sathya sir, and finally end with Priya.
The role of the mentor, I think, at that stage in the educational process of the student is possibly the most important role that anyone can play. It can make or break his spirit. It can actually lead him along the wrong path if you're not careful. So one has to balance out a lot of things. But it's not just the design teacher. I feel there should be a panel of teachers who go through the design studio, including the one who teaches them structural engineering, including the one who teaches them building construction, including the one who teaches them history, for all we know, who should be going around the studio and examining the students' work, and all of them ideating at the same time in what we normally call a jury, but I wouldn't call it a jury at this time. I would only call it mentorship. So it's a very important role to play, and it can bring the student to a state when he begins to understand the practicality of something that he's dreamt about. And one shouldn't discourage dreaming. All of us are dreamers. All of us are creative people. We dream a lot. But at some point, we have to say, okay, enough is enough. Now let's get down to the brass tacks and see how, with your knowledge of all these other things you've been learning in the last 5 years, that you can make this dream come true. How is it really possible? Are you going to have a 60-foot span? If so, how? Are you going to use so-and-so material? What are the limitations? What are the strengths of it? Are you using glass? Are you aware of the problems of using glass, of maintaining glass, and so on? So this is what mentorship is all about. And I think it's very important for all of us to play this very crucial role in the stage of a student's career.
Very brilliantly put. I myself am a teacher. For the last 10 years, I've been trying to discuss design with students, because I personally feel design is not something that taught per se in the classroom. And you rightly mentioned that the student needs to be questioned and asked to rationalize what they feel about their own design ideas and decisions that they're making while finalizing their design. Sathya sir, your thoughts, please.
It is a question where everybody would answer the same way. So I have no different answer. But let me put in a different sense altogether for other reasons. See, every idea that as a student I come up with will not be or may not be appreciated by the faculty right away. I am an individual, faculty is another individual. At a conceptual level, at an ideation level, there are very many, very personal, very subjective opinions. And two subjective opinions, we all know, is a conflict. But I think, as Yeshwant sir said, when it gets translated to maybe materials or cost or technology or built-up area or program, then the subjective becomes objective. When an objective level is more easier for a student and the mentor or faculty to be in the same wavelength. So my young students, there will be conflicts, there will be paradoxes in the initial stages because the faculty may not agree with you, may agree with you, they may suggest something else. But then as we work along, I'm sure the common denominator will evolve.
Great. Haripriya, your words on that?
I totally agree to both Yeshwant sir, Sathya sir, and what word you have used to rather call us teachers, but mentors. I appreciate using that word, Mahesh, because I think as uh, people, we never teach somebody, but we train somebody, or we guide the student, or let's say an intern or a team member. As in, we all have, as human beings, being very intelligent, we have that strong desire that we are bent towards. As Sathya sir was putting that, there is a very strong intuition to the attachment of idea, and we cannot deny anything to be practical or impractical at this stage of academics. And it is more, in my opinion, be impractical. Start impractical. What will happen? Say my house is gonna levitate in air. What's the big deal about it? You now, as a mentor, I would say, what I can, as an individual, as an architect, or have a bit better experience than my student, would want to help that student understand how to make that levitation possible. I mean, that would be my strength of saying that I'm better experienced than you, giving that experience and learning with the student to achieve that possibility. And in this process, there might be a readiness to both the parties, where I can say the student might say, oh, you thought of it, I couldn't think of it. I might say the vice versa. And we arrive where the practical possibility of this particular thought the student comes up with is happening or not. I think
I
that's
think
what
that's the job of the mentor, to balance that reality and the practicality and the little bit of the utopian thought that the student may have.
utopian is always appreciated.
Appreciative, of course, of course.
I think after that we will all be stuck to things, stuck to budget and everything. Let them break their rules, and we are there always to help.
That this question and the answers from all three of you justifies that, because the topic was why design concepts are important in architecture against the current industry practices. So my next and the last question, you all three could answer, or you can decide whoever wants to answer, is also come from the viewers today, who are majorly students. They are asking, because we all come from different colleges, do you think a common architectural pedagogy can be applied across the country, or whatever is prevalent right now, does that needs to be changed? Could we start with Yeshwant sir on that? Your words.
I think a lot has to be changed, Mahesh, but we'll be here till tomorrow morning if we go on with the discussion. The first thing is, I very strongly feel architectural education should go back from being a 4-year course into a 5-year course. I very strongly feel that the student doesn't have enough theoretical knowledge when he or she graduates to come into the real world. Also, this whole business about sending a student on an internship, somewhere that's going wrong. I mean, you just look at the numbers, 350, 400 colleges. Are there enough architects to take in that many number of interns? And even if there are enough architects to take in that many, are they doing a justifiably good job of changing the way that intern views what is theoretical and how does he make it into a practicality? How do we then also evaluate whether the student has had a meaningful 1 year of practical training? And even if we do continue with the idea that internship is a good thing, I think it should happen before the final year of college and not after it, because it makes a world of a difference to the way they engage with their thesis studies if they have practical knowledge which they can get in the field. So this is about internship. Our teaching needs to be a lot more real time and not textual teaching sitting in the classroom. I find that with one visit to a skyscraper that's coming up, we are teaching them about lift technologies, about RCC technologies, about materials, about so many different things, bylaws, and what you can do in one site visit, you can't do even across 10 lectures. Admittedly, there will be students who just come there to take selfies and to upload them onto the internet. That's bound to happen, even if you're sitting in a classroom. But by and large, I find that when people are on sites, they learn a lot more, there's a lot more questioning. And here again, when we go onto a site, I request the air conditioning consultant to come. I request the lighting consultant to come. So it becomes a very comprehensive kind of a study of everything that goes into what constitutes a good building. So that's one thing that I think we need to change. As Dean de Cruz said right at the beginning, we simply do not have the right number of teachers. And this is at the core of the systemic failure, that we don't have teachers, and even the teachers that are there aren't qualified to teach. They won't, what's the right word to use? They're there because it's a job to do. They're not.
Yeah, they're not conditioned to be teachers. Like.
Yeah. Teacher improvement programs, if we do accept the fact that we are going to get people with insufficient qualification or insufficient experience, then very frequently we should have teacher enrichment programs. I was doing a seminar about 2 years ago in Jaipur about the teaching of the history of interior design. So I said, why don't we start this questioning with the students? And you'll be surprised at the number of points that the students brought up, which we take for granted. They said, oh, history is a very boring lecture. We don't want to go to it. We'd rather sit in the canteen. So I said, why? They said, history teachers don't smile, sir. So using that as a metaphor, I think the way a teacher presents himself or herself in the classroom, how he connects with the students is also very important for knowledge dissemination. And we need to work harder on those areas of pedagogy.
Very important, very important. Because I myself am a history teacher. It's my core subject. I love doing that. Yeah, you're right, absolutely. And coincidentally, now that you mentioned, I was present at this Jaipur Triple ID event where you expressed this thought to the students at the Jawaharlal Kala Kendra, an amazingly designed place. And I remember this. So yeah, Sathya sir, what do you say? Classroom way of handling design as against the reality in the field, two diverse ways of dealing. So what are your thoughts?
I have one thought, Mahesh. I know that you smile a lot. And I'm sure when you take history class, you do smile and laugh. So whoever said that statement, he or she will have to take her statement back now if Mahesh takes history.
Thank you, thank you.
Now back into this. Well, one does not really foresee a so-called change in academics. Where does change begin from? Change doesn't happen in academics. Change doesn't happen in practice or profession. Change happens inside us. If we say there has to be a change in academics, that means there has to be change inside us. If we say there has to be change in our profession, that means we have to change. If we do say there has to be change in a building to make it more whatever IGBC lead or Griha rated building, the building is not the culprit. The building is not red or black or brown, nothing. We make the building what it is. It is we who have to change. If we feel it should be an eco-friendly building, we would be designing an eco-friendly building. Now, if we design a building which is not eco-friendly, then we have to change the building. It has a paradox. There's a contradiction. We have to change. Anyway, that's one point. Second, look at the practices. Thanks for allowing us to show slides. In the beginning, somewhere I said, in offices, too often, most clients don't come and ask what is a concept. So before we show the design, of course, Yeshwant sir, he showed a few PPT where there was a process. Quite often there, we don't have 10, 15, 20 slides before we show the design to a client. It only happens in studios. But then there's a process in the studio, which is very important. There's a sequence, process, thought, concept, of course, today's topic, concept, ideation, influences, inspirations. All of them are there presented by the student to the faculty. In office, it doesn't happen much. But then in a college, what happens? In a school, what happens? What sir said about this, the building study. I use the word building study. I fully agree with you. And often I also used to say that, the real architecture happens outside the four walls of the studio. And that's where we can learn. So the product part, it may be AC or lift or lighting or whatever he mentioned about. There are many more. So what we need is simple. Our architecture profession to begin with has to become more process oriented, just like academics are. And our education has to become little more product focused, just like the profession is. That's all from my side.
I like it how you kept it to that small statement and correct on point. So, any last parting words from Haripriya on this, and then I will formally try to conclude this so that the quick switch over for the next panel discussion is to happen. Yes, Sathya sir.
No, you mentioned there are a couple of other queries. Please check with the organizers if it's possible to save them, record them, whatever, and forward.
Yeah, what I have done then, yes, yeah. What we have done is we've received so many questions. By now they've gone more than 25 already. So we are going to email these questions to our panelists and generate answers. And this could be hosted on our A-Sketch website. So keep looking out for the answers on the A-Sketch website, Instagram pages. The idea is to generate a dialogue, and that's the motive of the foundation, to have knowledge being sent out to everybody without really a bar on it. So Haripriya, your parting words, please.
Yeah, so not taking much of the time, I agree to both Yeshwant sir and Sathya sir's points. And also I would quote what Sathya sir mentioned about change is, as human beings, we are not hardwired to accept change very quickly. It is a long process for us. Anything new is scary always. It's not where we say that this is what we are. If we accept, yes, it is possible to change. Another thing, that good, bad, or evil at today's condition, I think we have to change, or we are meant to change the system of architecture and design education in the very new future, because we don't have an option. We are in a pandemic stage where we are being said it'll get back to normal, but what if? Let's take the worst scenario. It's a third wave of cases coming up in US and Europe. Would we still have the opportunity to sit with a student or an intern to make them draft something manually? Is it possible? Are we as educators able to change that idea that pencil, which is a digital tool, now could replace, and we could learn and teach both together? Is, I think, that flick, knowingly or unknowingly, because of this situation, is going to happen. And yes, it'll be the most scariest part. It'll be the break for a lot of educators, a lot of designers, a lot of learners together. But yes, it is something that at this point, at the future that we are coming at, we are needed to do that. And also closing, I would say, whether we end up becoming great architects or not, as individuals and as educators and as students also, it's more important that if the education and architecture could make us a better human, because that is where everything starts off. You will start questioning, understanding, and more empathetically looking at where, why, and how everything starts off, and makes it more socially responsible human beings and architects. I think that's where the system needs to move.
Great. I really like the wise words on this one. And let me put this on record that having a panel discussion with slides being shown may not have happened often, and but the way all three of you have contributed with your ideas to this topic and trying to weave this connection of design concepts with architecture that's happening around. Thank you very much. You all have been wonderful. My takeaways from the discussion has been that design concepts are not discrete. They are very much there, and we all need to make sure that we are human enough to address the concerns of the client, the climate, the temperatures, the environment around, the material that we are using, being cautious about our finances as well, the comfort of the user, and the design decision making that we have to make while transcending these design concepts into reality, which Sathya sir and Yeshwant sir were rightly pointing out. That has to happen more intelligently, more sincerely, as good architecture students and good architects as well. So thank you all of you. I would formally like to thank all three of you and hand it over to the A-Sketch volunteer to wind this session up. I would request all three panelists to stay tuned for the 1 o'clock panel discussion, and of course the audience here, because it's another topic that might just spark a debate is about women in architecture. And I myself personally am looking forward to the interaction with the four ladies on board. So here I formally thank you all, and over to Dhanusha, please.
Thank you, Mahesh sir. It was a splendid experience listening to all of you. It was a huge opportunity to hear all of you talking and sharing your knowledge and experiences on your works. I think students have a whole new respect for our profession right now. Thank you very much for those wonderful words. And the panel discussion about women in architecture starts at 1 p.m. So I would like everyone to be back at 1 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mahesh.
We'll all leave the meeting here. Thank you very much.
All right.